Forestry and Natural Resource Commission meeting. And I did mention that we did have one public comment. She did not sign up officially. She was going to another commission. So I will share her comments with you all. And I'll send those out. We do have a really busy agenda tonight. So I think we're going to get started. I did want to introduce Marissa, though, who's here. And she and I visited on the, I guess, a student or a friend of Elizabeth Guerin. And so has got that background and anyway is here visiting and listening to us tonight. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to get started right away then. We don't have any other public comment.
Have any?
I didn't see anything.
No.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that. So we're going to start off then with Rich Dooley and the Climate Action Plan. Thank you for being here. Rich is doing double duty tonight, so we get it first. Anyway, we'll let you take it from there.
Very good. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And many thanks to Chair Haynes for the opportunity to be here tonight to provide you all with an update to the county's ambitious initiative to develop its first comprehensive climate action plan. Many thanks also to this August Group's representative to our Climate Action Plan Advisory Group. That is David Howell. Been working with him for quite a bit, and we greatly value David's input into the process as we develop the Climate Action Plan. So as Chair Haynes had mentioned, I'm Rich Dooley, Director of Climate Policy for the county, also Project Manager for the Climate Action Plan. I'm in the Climate Policy Office, which is in the County Manager's Office. This new plan will build on the foundation of the Community Energy Plan, also known as the CEP, not to be confused with the CAP, which would be the Climate Action Plan. The CEP is currently an element of the county's comprehensive plan, and we will be updating it and also replacing it, hopefully by the end of all this process, with the broader, more integrated approach to addressing climate change. While the CEP is focused on climate mitigation and some resilience measures, the CAP will expand its scope to include additional sectors critical to achieving sustainable and resilient future, such as the circular economy and healthy ecosystems. Overall project and process to develop the Climate Action Plan is synthesized by the acronym in our project logo shown on this slide at the lower left-hand side, ACT, ACT, which stands for Arlington Climate Together. That acronym highlights the fact that everyone in our community has a role to play to address the impacts of climate change. We're providing this project information tonight as an information item, and this is something we're doing to multiple commissions. We once again appreciate your time on this. Tonight's session is going to be a blend of information items plus a whole host of information, including the next steps. So to our project team, I just want to thank the numerous people, in addition to David, numerous people throughout the county, including multiple county departments, as well as our consultants team who have gotten us to this stage of the project development and will carry us through for the rest of this project. We'd be here all today, all during the evening if I tried to name everybody involved in this, but suffice it to say, these are some of the leaders that have the wonderful opportunity to work on this pretty much on a daily basis. You see Jen Souls here tonight. She is a DPR representative and in the thick of this. Also joining tonight, I believe, is Jen Fioretti. Jen Fioretti is the Assistant County Manager on Climate Policy, and she is Project Director for this project. We also have representatives from DES with Drew Stilson, and you see Rena Laura with our CPO on communications and engagement, leading that group. And then for AECOM, they're our consultant for this, and those are some of the leaders within the AECOM group that are working with us pretty much on a daily basis. So in addition to the staff core team, we also have an interdepartmental working group comprised of staff from multiple county departments. We are all in this together, and it's important for the county departments to be involved in the plan's creation as well as its eventual implementation. Our project's advisory groups representatives come from 18 different advisory and community groups and businesses in the county. Cindy Lewin is C2E2 chair. She's also co-chair of this group. And I'm also a co-chair working together with Cindy on the entire process. Now, climate change impacts each location in the world differently, right? So in the next couple slides, we're going to highlight the main hazards that we'll focus on with this project that are most relevant to Arlington County. The DC area's average temperature since the late 1800s, which is the left-hand side of this graph, 1870 if I'm remembering correctly, shows that 54 degrees was the average annual temperature back in the day. Unfortunately, the story goes that that has been gradually increasing, and the red line is your average plot line, if you will, over time to the current day. And it's to say that temperatures have risen now to 60 degrees on average per year. So the story is not the best if you're not wanting to deal with extreme heat. And all this spells trouble when it comes to managing heat stress, especially for our vulnerable populations, for children who are using our parks, our ball fields, for our county staff and contractors who need to work outside in these increasingly hotter elements. Am I right, Jen?
Right.
Yeah, I thought so. Didn't think I'd get too many arguments from her. So another slide to just describe why extreme heat matters. And we highlight some of the dangers, such as in public health, also with emergency services under strain. And there you see the graphic on the right-hand side shows over time, working out to close to the year 2100, there are going to be more and more days above 90 degrees in the Washington, D.C. area, including here in Arlington. So extreme heat was one of those things that we're looking at in regards to our vulnerabilities. Then there's also extreme storms, which lead to rainfall and flooding. So the map here shows projected increases in days with heavy rainfall of more than 2 inches or more by the year 2100. And it's important to note that with climate change, we're seeing greater fluctuations in our rainfall patterns and our events. So it's also important to note that not all of these come with a great amount of warning. And if you remember back to 2019 with that storm that came in the morning hours, it was a thunderstorm chain that came through and caused the extensive flooding in 2019. And there was not, I can tell you from personal experience, a lot of lead time in regards to getting people prepared for that. Again, why does increasing rainfall intensity matter? It talks about our infrastructure being at odds with the flooding. But I will tell you that the county staff have been working hard at addressing this with something called the Risk Assessment Management Plan, which was created just a couple of years ago. It has new inundation maps based on incorporating climate change into the modeling. We use what's called RCP 8.5, which is one of the more intense forecasts when it comes to climate change. That was incorporated into that modeling and resulted in those inundation maps. And staff are using that to go ahead and implement a number of different best practices and actions to address flooding throughout the county. The storm's drain system was built up many years ago, generally designed for a 10-year storm. And even without climate change, if you don't have sufficient overland relief, which we don't, for those larger storms, it's going to exceed the system capacity, which puts properties as well as people in harm's way. So we are planning for the risks of today and tomorrow. We, as mentioned, adopted the Risk Assessment Management Plan, and the CAP is not looking to recreate the wheel. So we're not trying to do this all over again. The Risk Assessment Management Plan has done a really good job of this at addressing these matters. And this is just a way to say that the Climate Action Plan is going to be that central resource that gathers from things like the RAMP, from the FNRP, and from other elements in which you go ahead and you have already gone through significant analysis when it comes to climate change and how climate change impacts us. And the Climate Action Plan will point to those elements as opposed to trying to recreate the wheel. Master Transportation Plan, as we speak, is yet another element of that that is being updated as we speak. So there's no silver bullet when it comes to addressing climate change. It takes many different actions to reduce emissions. And that's the focus when it comes to the mitigation actions. As I mentioned earlier in this presentation, we are adding adaptation and resilience into the various measures that are going to be incorporated in the Climate Action Plan. And so all those things are going to be addressed. There's going to be numerous opportunities for you to weigh in on whether the right actions are in there for mitigation, adaptation, as well as a resilience as we make our way through this project. This is the wedge chart from the current Community Energy Plan, which was last updated in 2019. About the many ways we've modeled how we plan to get to carbon neutrality as a community by the year 2050. Part of this project is going to revisit that modeling effort and also to work with the community and all of you to establish what we all think is the best plan moving forward. So here are a couple slides coming up that are going to describe this climate action plan project, which is yet again an 18 to 24-month project overall. The plan sets out what Arlington County, as well as all Arlingtonians, can do together. Again, that ACT reference and logo comes in strong here. How do we cut pollutions? How do we reduce our climate change impacts? And how do we adapt and become more resilient for a safer and a healthier future? Just as a gentle reminder, 97% of our greenhouse gas emissions in our community come from the community at large, not from county government operations. County government operations overall contribute only a little over 3%. So while it's important for us as county representatives and staff to do everything that we can in our operations to do the right thing, it's imperative that we have the entire community in on this to not only understand the impacts of climate change, but also be active participants when it comes to implementing the things that need to be done to lower our greenhouse gas emissions, and again, to address some of those adaptation and resiliency measures. Here's our high-level project timeline showing the steps toward what will eventually be, we hope, the new climate action plan. In essence, we're developing our baseline to know where we're starting from, since we know we're already underway when it comes to addressing climate change. Then we'll conduct a gap analysis to see what's missing in terms of goals, policies, and actions. Again, we'll lean on AECOM, which has a wealth of experience working with numerous localities all throughout the U.S., and tap into their expertise to better understand some of those best practices from around the country and see whether or not they could be applied here. Recognizing we don't have all the money in the world nor time to do everything all at once, we need to prioritize the various actions. And then that will wrap all that information up into our draft climate action plan, which will go through numerous rounds of edits to make sure the plan accurately portrays the interests from county staff as well as the community before the draft final plan goes out to the county board for consideration. And that will be in late 2027 into early 2028. Throughout the entire process, we will be reaching out to this group as well as the entire community to review and comment on draft content before we move forward to the next phase of the project. We developed an overall project stakeholder engagement and communications plan. Once again, Rena Laura on our team has been spearheading that effort. She's been doing a fantastic job. Suffice it to say, we plan for enhanced coordination across county departments as well as community stakeholders for a robust and a comprehensive engagement effort using multiple means to reach and gather feedback from county departments, residents, as well as businesses. We'll run the project in phases, beginning with this visioning process we're in right now, then developing that list of goals, policies, and actions, prioritization, and then wrapping it all up into that draft climate action plan for the county board consideration. So listed on this slide talks about numerous ways to have in-person as well as virtual events, including focus groups and other engagement tools to gather comments from our community. As we obtain comments, we will ensure we respond to those comments through a dynamic resource that captures the comments, the questions, and the concerns, and at the same time, lets those people submitting those comments and such to understand what the team's replies are to the input. That way, people will have a chance to be heard, and they can understand how their input has been considered in the creation of the final climate action plan. So we held our public launch for this event back on February 25th. Hopefully some of you were able to make it to Central Library for the Climate and Cuisine event, focusing on food matters. Provided here is a synopsis of the information we want to spread to educate about the climate action plan and essentially the process and some of those key questions that we're asking during this visioning effort that's going on for the rest of the spring into the early summer. So I'm happy to say that we've been asking the community for feedback, and this is one way that we're doing it is through the use of a feedback form. So you're welcome to go ahead and use your phones right now and use the camera on your phones to go ahead and click on that QR code, click on the button that comes up on your screen, and you'll be able to access that feedback form immediately to go ahead and to provide your 2 cents and provide your answers to the questions that come up on that form. The feedback form is going to be closing Friday, June 26th. And we ask that you please go ahead and promote this throughout your channels, throughout your social media, your friends, your family, and so forth. Let them know that this form exists. And we truly do want input from any and all corners of Arlington County to make sure that the climate action plan reflects the interests and the values of our community. And again, this is not going to be the only opportunity to go ahead and have a say in what the climate action plan is all about. But again, with this visioning process, we definitely want to hear from people. So in terms of our next steps listed here, we have the different phases of engagement for that 18 to 24 month process. For this phase one and our visioning process, we do have canvassing going on, those pop-up events, in addition to our climate action plan advisory group meetings that David will be in, including one next week on June 4th. We're engaging the public through a whole host of activities that are noted on this slide. Lastly, our consultant to the project, AECOM, once again, will be delivering to us this summer a desktop vulnerability assessment that will focus on those three primary hazards that were noted earlier on in this presentation: extreme heat, the drought, and extreme rainfall through the storm events. We plan to weave the results from that deliverable into our climate action plan action development process. Also, we have a flyer on the table here. If you haven't had a chance to grab one, grab on your way out. Next Monday from 6 to 8, we encourage you to come join us at Central Library for an open house to help. We're going to be using it to help educate the community on climate action work already done over the years, as well as ongoing work to address climate change. And also, we plan to ask for the public's input on what they would like to see in a future climate action plan. And so that again is next Monday, going on from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock at Central Library. That is the end of the formal presentation. Once again, Chair Haynes, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to spread the word about this. And thank you all for the attention. And again, Jen Fioretti, Assistant County Manager, is here with me. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
You're
That
welcome.
is a wonderfully concise overview of everything you've been doing. So, any questions for Rich? Yes, Josh?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thanks for a great presentation. Learned a lot. Two topics: gas-powered leaf blowers, and I'm glad you're here, Jen, so I can give you the look, and the heat island effect. Gas-powered leaf blowers. Little disappointed. Just kind of more, not a criticism, just observation. This commission had written a letter encouraging an 18-month implementation of the ban. So kind of sorry you end up as staff recommending 3 years. And kind of disappointed at a meta level as well. I think many of us were very supportive of creating the position you're in. And I think any of us have been involved in environmental issues for most of our adult lives. And a traditional theme, of course, in environmental movement is the industry saying this is going to cost us money to change. Whether it be ozone, smoking, lead and gasoline, multitudes of emissions from all sorts of smokestacks. And so in this case, it was kind of like so frustrating that the position of our newly created czar kind of took the industry position rather than the public's position. I just want to put that out there for people to think about. Moving on to the heat island effect, thanks for leading with that. Very interesting presentation, and these three extremes we're concerned about. Gas-powered leaf blower is related to that in the sense of 97% of the emissions are for private emissions. Gas-powered leaf blowers produce a lot of emissions compared to cars, so we think that'd be higher on the priority list to curtail. But more importantly, you have this issue of looking at sustainable transportation. But what about sustainable housing construction? We're having a push for density in Arlington. Lucky Gardens, right? Am I recalling correctly? Up near Langston Boulevard, you're taking a kind of very large spread green space and making a much more dense high rise, eliminating a lot of green space, grass space that helps with the heat island effect. If this process continues in Arlington, the corridors, which are already at a very high heat level, it's going to spread throughout Arlington. So I'm wondering how you're thinking about that as you're looking over the next few years and what kind of recommendations may come out of it. Thanks.
Appreciate the comments. Did you, Jen, want to say anything about leaf blowers before I go into the urban heat island?
I apologize, I'm in the back.
Sorry to drag you into it, Jen.
Behind your
I did listen to your county board presentation just as context, so
No, that's quite all right. So with regards to the gas powered leaf blowers, I mean, we took into consideration, I mean, first, I think it's a staff are recommending that we prohibit gas powered leaf blowers, which is
it's great. Yeah, I should.
just a step in the certainly the right direction. And we took into consideration a variety of inputs. And the transition that this commission recommended a transition, our transition that we're considering is or recommending is a little bit longer, not just for the financial reasons. I mean, if the industry had their way, they wouldn't want it. I mean, a large majority of the feedback was that they didn't want the prohibition at all. And so, and we're taking into consideration not only financial impacts, performance, because there is a change. I mean, Arlington, when we transitioned, we had to make some changes in how we operated. So we have firsthand experience in how how electric powered leaf blowers operate, especially the commercial ones. The residential, there's really not that much of a difference. But we are sensitive to that change. And this is amidst, and again, this is their feedback to us amidst the sort of economic climate. And some of them are struggling. And so we're taking in all of those inputs, recognizing that what we really need to do is to work on how we can transition both residential and commercial as quickly as possible. Enforcement is very hard to do because you have Arlington is required to, our enforcement folks need to see the person that's using the gas powered leaf blower actually use it in the moment. And it can be rather quick sometimes. So for us to get out there and catch them is difficult. And so in the end, our real focus is on doubling down on getting the transition, helping folks to transition far sooner than 3 years. So that's those are the inputs and recognizing there isn't a perfect sort of scenario, but there's just not a perfect scenario, but this is the one that we considered based on all of the inputs that we've received.
And on, thank you, Jen. And on urban heat island impacts, county is already working on through the Green Building Incentive Program. There's already opportunities to go ahead and to address the urban heat island impacts through the use of things like green roofs, as an example. Unfortunately, we can't dictate to each of these site plans or each of these projects, whether it be Lucky Gardens or otherwise, exactly what they go ahead and do in terms of their projects. But our air staff and our green building manager meets with some of those site plan project personnel to let them know, here's what we would like to go ahead and see. And so lays that out there prior to the project going through the SPRC process. In addition to that, as I had mentioned, we will have desktop vulnerability assessment. Urban heat island impact is going to be front and center as one of the 3 primary hazards that are going to be looked at. So we're going to be reviewing that information from our consultant AECOM, mine that for any opportunities, and then talk with them about ways to go ahead and to address these various vulnerabilities and hazards that are before us by taking the information and from the work that they've done in places like Phoenix, California, all throughout the United States, and ask them, what do you think is most applicable and best regarded for us here in our climate and here in Arlington? And last but not least, we will provide those actions as draft actions. And if you have other ideas or anybody in the room has other ideas that they would like to put out there, we will have numerous opportunities to go ahead and do that, whether it be through online forums or in-person meetings. And so we welcome your feedback on that.
One quick one, and that don't need a response. A new factor on this issue is the Yes in My Backyard law, which will allow the churches and religious properties to convert by right to a more dense housing. The law itself is focused on increasing density because it's reducing or making minimal setbacks. Churches, religious properties, nonprofit properties obviously have some very nice green space around Arlington. If they all turn into dense high rises, I think we're gonna have a bigger issue with the heat island effect. Just want to put that out there as you're moving forward on this. Okay, thanks very much for your response.
So 2 things. One about leaf blowers. So I ran an industry sector focused program at EPA for 16 years. I've heard a million times the sky is falling excuse from businesses. Switching to electric blowers is not rocket science, especially since it's already been done in DC and Montgomery County. So I hear you when you say you're going to encourage them to do it in less than 3 years. But I really think that a transition could happen without putting these companies out of business. They know what they're doing. And this isn't a secret because you've been working on it for a long time. So respectfully, I still think 3 years is too long. But this relates to a larger point that I want to raise. I'm very gratified to see in your slides that the little tree logo is in both the adaptation side and the mitigation side of your strategy. And that's great. And David, to his great credit, has been doing white papers and testifying in informing and educating the county about all the opportunities that exist to use nature as a key part of any strategy to deal with climate change. However, my personal view is that we give a lot of lip service to that. And at the end of the day, we still end up focusing on the buses and some, green building design, not disrespecting what you said, but not focusing on nature as maybe the best way to deal with all the climate issues that you're dealing with. And I'm a little bit concerned that you're going to go through a 2-year process and at the end you'll have little tree logos all over your plan, and yet you're not really going to change in the way of things that are done. We're working on a lot coverage study, and who knows if that's going to decrease impervious surface. But we need to decrease it because we're not making any progress toward our 40% canopy goal yet. Just today, I learned that the tract mansion that was put in across the street from my house, I was wondering, why didn't they plant a big shade tree in the front yard? And the answer I got from the guy who built the house was that they had to put cisterns in the front yard and they can't put in a big shade tree. To me, that's not using actions to address nature as a strategy for dealing with climate and heat islands and everything else. I'm a little concerned that our actions don't match up with the rhetoric. And we just keep getting promises that, yeah, David, yeah, FNRC, you've made some great strides in in the points that you're making. And we've emphasized biophilia. But that and 50 cents is going to get me a cup of coffee. I think we need to start seeing actual changes in action plans in the comprehensive plan, in the transportation plan, in this climate action plan where nature is fully integrated throughout the plan. And it is front and center in the first paragraph, not the 50th paragraph, the first paragraph, that nature is a key strategy to address our climate issues, both adaptation and mitigation. And maybe I'm preaching to the choir, maybe you all believe this, but I think that I don't see evidence of it in the years that I've been on this commission now. I keep seeing in site plan review and all of these mega strategy planning projects, I see a lot of lip service to nature, but I don't see actual changes happening in decisions that are made. And I'm getting to the point where maybe I want to non-concur on some site plan projects because you're still not doing it right. The county's still not doing it right, and we're losing ground every day to clear cutting. So I'm sorry to go on, but I really feel like we have all the right words and all the right logos, but we aren't actually taking the actions that David was talking about 3-4 years ago. We could have made strides over the last 4 years for what you were talking about, and we haven't done that. I think we still have a great opportunity to do it with this plan. We have a huge opportunity to do it, but it's got to be more than words. It's got to be actual changes in the way the county does business. Maybe a good first change would be to change the leaf blower thing to 2 years, just to kind of symbolically show that business doesn't get the final word on every single thing in this county. Lots for you to consider.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're doing a comprehensive plan introduction build right now. While you're doing that, while the transportation plan is happening. And because nature is all about ecology, should be thinking about urban ecology in a holistic sense, which is including how all of the mechanisms that we have, the plans and the other tools, administrative tools we have, how they work together. How they don't work together. You mentioned the GBIP, which had some really good updates. I'm really happy with lead version 5. My frustration with lead with the GBIP is that it doesn't have a very big reach, actually.
Mhm.
And so as we do the comp plan, and that comp plan might lead to an update of the GLUB, I would like to see a real serious examination of how the GLUB can be modified to promote some of the other goals that we have in climate and transportation and biophilic design and combating the 3 priorities that you're talking about,
Mhm.
and participation in GBIP, which means changing the zoning in a way that makes it a more inclusive umbrella for all of the development that might fall under it, that would then be managed by those provisions. That takes some pretty high level coordination, which your office can do. Nobody else has
No
even
pressure.
gotten there conceptually before. And so one of the frustrations that a commission has is dealing with different departments that on a certain level, the ideas go above the clouds from the point of view of any particular department. Not saying it's their fault, but it's an opportunity to find a way to mutually reinforce and tie together all the things that probably everybody wants, but can't quite get to it by themselves. And that includes different parts of DES that have really complicated missions that are sometimes in conflict themselves, like transportation and stormwater. So anyway, I'm not sure. I mean, your comments and other comments made me realize that this is the kind of opportunity we should be looking at. I don't really have anything more on it right now. But I think that it's a concept that should come up in different planning processes. And bubble up to where at some point those different plans, whether it be transportation or the comp plan introduction or future GLUB or the action plan, where that theme is being talked about. And there's a way to get those things married up at the highest level.
Appreciate the comments, and I will tell you that Jen has been wonderful at ensuring that the Climate Policy Office is included in the various discussions. And I can tell you firsthand, I had the opportunity to go through the many pages of the draft MTP to ensure that the things that we've been advocating for and so forth are integrated into that, or at least our suggestions are put in there. So, but it's a point well taken. As a planner myself, I can fully appreciate where you're coming from. And there's, I'll wear my continuous improvement hat. There's always room for improvement on further advancing these goals.
Thank you.
Just a very quick comment, just sort of follow up on what Bob said. I too noticed that trees were the only item that was in both sides of the Venn diagram.
Mhm.
I would, and I think your general audience was saying, well, yeah, trees are good. We need to plant more. I would like to see the plan get into more of the specifics about how we get more trees in the county. I mean, we basically have a structural problem with the public facilities having done an excellent job in planting trees, whereas private individuals are sort of lagging. And in order to increase the tree canopy, we're going to have to figure out a way to incentivize private homeowners to plant more trees. And I'd like to see you comment on that specifically, rather than just make a general statement that trees are good for the environment.
Mhm.
So if you could drill down in that would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, we will take that comment and incorporate that. And you're familiar with Eco Action. and the tree initiative where they plant trees to homeowners.
You're taking advantage of it.
I've taken advantage of it as well. And just on a personal note, I have two relatively large trees coming from a nursery on Monday being planted in our newly landscaped front yard.
Oh,
So I'm trying to do my part. But hopefully, people in my neighborhood will see that as well, and we can go ahead and spread the word of this notice. So I will do what I can. But thank you for your comment in regard to the plan.
Rich, just if I may.
Please.
So, and I know you saw this in Rich's presentation, but what's really important is that the climate action plan is reflecting back on the other comp plan elements. As essentially, while we are updating and refreshing the community energy plan, we're expanding the scope. Think of it more, in many ways, it'll be a meta plan where we're digging into the forestry and natural resources plan and the important recommendations set forth in that policy document and highlighting those that have impact. So it's not just creating the new, which we may through our engagement and conversations and modeling, identify some gaps where we can identify new places where we can sort of talk about different types of incentives for tree planting, for example. But I just don't want to lose sight that there are some really rich recommendations in the FNRP that we'll be looking at to bring in and to amplify the action plan. So for what it's worth.
yeah, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Really appreciate you all being here
Yeah,
and
thank you.
keeping us up. As you can tell, we're passionate about this. So
I share the passion and I can appreciate it. And to be continued, this project is going to be going on through this year into next year. And so stay tuned for opportunities to go ahead and to keep apprised. And down here, I will just make a plug that there is a way to go ahead and sign up so that your personal emails can go ahead and be hit by information that Rena on our team and others send out. And we look forward to further conversations with you.
Send me your comments next week.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Nico.
All right, and we get to immediately have John Souls give us an update on basic. We're getting an 18.
Oh, great, for like, yeah.
Oh, now we got to turn that on.
Audio.
It's kind of.
Now we're
Oh,
She said to mute herself. Now we got.
But I mean, that's.
I think there's a connection. I think she needs to mute herself.
Yeah. Well, and also turn up, because the big microphone will catch it. So.
I muted myself and turned off my speaker.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we've had this happen at both of the last Energy.
And,
I remember that last energy meeting. It was insane. Yeah, so again, I'm Jennifer Souls with our Natural Resources Unit, focusing on invasive plant management, and I want to thank you all for asking me to be here this evening. I'll be followed by a presentation that I'm sure many of you are anticipating, that will shed some light on where we're going with this. So I'm going to briefly introduce the Natural Resource Unit as a whole and provide a little overview of that before I get into the invasive plant program and provide an update on where the invasive plant program is in fiscal year FY26. So the Natural Resources Unit, as many of you know, is responsible for maintaining the health and ecological function of 543 acres of natural land on county properties. It's primarily park property, but also includes other property as well. We have, in the map on the right there, you'll see that the county-owned natural lands are in green, and then other jurisdictions such as National Park Service or NEPA parks are in gray. The Natural Resource Unit has 3 full-time staff, a unit manager, Alonzo Algadas, the invasive plant program manager, myself, and a field technician, Sue. Its 2 major business lines include habitat restoration, which is managing the landscape to move it towards the desired composition of plants and animals and other organisms. And then plan review to mitigate any negative impacts to natural resources from development. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about habitat restoration, but I promise this is leading to invasive plants. Habitat restoration encompasses a broad sweep of natural land management activities and comprises by far the most significant component of the natural resource unit's portfolio. Its three large components include inventory, monitoring, and assessment, natural lands, ecological stressor mitigation to reduce those negative pressures on habitat health, and then reintroducing beneficial species to restore ecological function where that's necessary. So in the broader effort to restore and maintain natural lands, invasive plant management is under the category of ecological stressor mitigation. It's one of our most visible and critical programs, but it's also just one component of a holistic approach to natural land management that includes other facets such as care management and restoration plantings. And with that, let's move into invasive plant management. I think all of you are familiar with what an invasive species is. Most of you could probably identify the invasive species in this picture. But an invasive species is a species that is not native to a specific region and that tends to spread to a degree believed to cause harm to the environment, economy, or human health. In layman's terms, they have to meet two criteria. One, they have to be non-native. They haven't evolved for thousands of years in this region. And then also that they are causing significant harm, one kind or another. I'm not going to talk about what kudzu is. So I think that you guys all already have that. And so as natural resource managers, managing this negative stressor in the environment is sort of incumbent on us as one of the key steps in maintaining the health and the diversity of those environments. So this is a priority also with multiple action steps in the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan, which was recently mentioned as an element in our comprehensive plan. So how does our natural resource management unit work? We have, as you mentioned, we're managing 543 acres. This is, I believe, 525 of those acres are in parks, but the vast majority of that land is on parkland. We currently have 510 of those acres prioritized for invasive management. We have 2 full-time staff, and so that's myself, and then Sue is part-time invasives, part-time restoration. And then we are doing this generally with a budget, an annual base budget of $109,000 for the last several years. We also have hundreds of volunteers that provide thousands of hours of service that are a pretty critical part of our program. And so we have been receiving additional one-time funds beyond our base budget since FY24. So beginning back in 2023, every year we've been receiving additional one-time funding. And that's really been allowing us to move forward. And this program also receives support from other units such as the Arlington neighborhood programs, park development projects, Department of Environmental Services projects, as well.
Isn't that number 300,000 in FY26? One-time funding?
It was 300,000 in FY25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was 100 in FY24, 300 in FY25, and then 100 this year, and then 100 next year.
Okay. And as I mentioned, we have incredible volunteers who support our invasive management efforts at parks countywide. They provide over 3,000 hours of invasive plant management and almost another 1,000 hours of natural resource work with the native plant nursery and habitat restoration plantings. We have over 40 dedicated park stewards leading events, several of whom are here in this room. And they critically supplement our contractor efforts and act as extra eyes in the park, identifying invasive threats and just helping us triage the work that needs to be done. And then critically also the conversations that they have, whether at a volunteer work day or with their friends or neighbors, just educating people about invasive plants and helping to reduce their spread.
So before we move into the program status in FY26, we're going to provide a high-level overview of our strategy. The strategy has 4 components that proceed roughly in order, though we do cycle back to the beginning as we bring new lands into management. The first step is assessment, where we inventory and survey our sites to evaluate factors such as the size, ecological value, social value, and the current invasive pressure. We then prioritize sites with a save the best first policy, where we focus attention on sites with higher ecological value and lower invasive pressure, as these locations have the highest benefit with the lowest cost. Working to preventatively suppress infestations before they become widespread is definitely the approach. It's a lot less expensive to manage that way. After assessing and prioritizing our sites, we move on to the 2 phases of direct invasive plant management, the suppression phase and the maintenance phase.
Sorry.
The suppression phase is the initial resource intensive effort to bring significant infestations down to acceptable. I don't know if they're ever acceptable, but to somewhat acceptable levels. The length of this phase can depend on the extent of the infestation, but usually takes at least 3 and usually 5 years. So if you're looking at an area completely covered with kudzu, this is getting it down. So there may still be a few patches of kudzu on the site, but that there is most of the kudzu is gone and there's space for native plants to begin growing. We deliberately use the word suppression instead of eradication or elimination because there's rarely such thing as completely eliminating an invasive species. The realistic goal is just to bring them down to that minimal level where the habitat still functions as intended. And the control methods we use to suppress invasive plant populations usually include mechanical controls and chemical controls such as herbicide. And then once invasives have been successfully suppressed, we consider the site to be in maintenance, which involves periodic treatment to keep the populations in check. We consider this to be ongoing in perpetuity. Invasives are continually reintroduced by wind, water, animals, people. You know, it takes some places, 10 to 15 years to exhaust a seed bank, and one plant that comes in and escapes, you're never going to be at zero. There are a few early detection rapid response species we've managed to catch the first individual, but other than that, looking at this as a long range project. We continue to use chemical and mechanical control during this maintenance phase. And this is also when we begin reintroducing native plants into the areas to both restore the function of the habitat and then to help control the invasives by providing some competition and by taking up that otherwise empty vacuum of space. In practice, we spend our budget on sites in the suppression and the maintenance phase. And as sites move from that more costly suppression phase, that frees up some money to begin suppression at yet another site. So this is the giant spreadsheet, which is not very strongly colored here. You'll get to see it again as we talk more about it. But basically what we're showing here is that the green on the earlier stages to the left gradually transitions to a blue. And again, this is looking pretty washed out here, but going from that suppression stage on the left to that maintenance phase on the right. And this is where we are today. So at this point, we have 382 acres under maintenance. We have 109 acres in suppression. And we have 19 acres that we've identified that we would like to manage that are waiting for management. That does leave, 510 is not 543. Understand that. Some of these sites are like odd slivers of inaccessible right of way that, we will look at once we get these higher priority sites into management. Maybe in the future we can bring them to management. They may not be worth managing at the same level as like a natural area. If it used to be an alley somewhere or something like that. And our additional one-time funding in FY27 is sufficient to continue this management, but not add additional lands. That brings us back to our giant spreadsheet, which, if you could see, basically right. Sorry, I just jumped to there we go. This is the progress we started making. We were up here. We started making progress with one-time funds. We made more progress with one-time funds. That was that 300. We've been maintaining the work that was started there. If we don't get more money in FY28, we will have to go back up here again. So at that point, we would lose progress on 15 sites currently under suppression and 7 sites currently in maintenance if we return to that original base budget. However, what I would probably be doing normally is coming back to you again and saying, I really need consistent funding so that I can make long-term plans. I don't want to bring sites into management if I'm going to have to drop them in a year or two. And definitely really appreciate the work of this commission and others that have led to this additional funding for the last several years. Enabling us to continue making this progress and follow up on the progress we've already made. And as you may have heard, the proposed CIP budget includes additional funding for invasive plant management and for habitat restoration. And Eric Beach, who's up next, is going to be covering this in depth during his presentation. But we just wanted to provide you with some context specific to the program and how it's going to affect invasives. And high level, the proposed CIP funding will support invasive plant management on all natural lands and county parks, as well as some additional county parks. And again, you can't really tell, but when this chart, it's again kind of washed out, but it all goes to green and blue all the way down. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And if you have questions.
Can you go back to that last slide, please, real quickly? I'm assuming in these later years, those are thousands of dollars. You're not spending $4 on a park.
Oh, yeah. So the numbers where it's like long sets numbers, it's where like I have the last year's cost. Once it starts dropping to like 4 or 10 or something.
Goes to 4,000.
4,000, 10,000,
Assume that.
2,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are estimates. David?
Yeah, can you go back to slide 8? So the last item, reintroduce native plants, is that typically from a different budget?
So
That's what you do when you deal, when you dealt with the invasives, but, and you just mentioned CIP, is this budgeted separately? I guess that's my question. Where, it's not, we want to do both, but we need to know where the balancing act is and that both aspects are priorities, but
yeah,
they shouldn't be competing with each other. So
exactly. You don't want to be like, well, am I going to control invasives or am I going to only have one pot of money? So our units budget has that $109,000 that is a base budget dedicated to invasive plant contracting. So I can't usually take that money and use it to buy native plants or to buy deer caging or something like that. That's dedicated for contractor management. And then we have, in addition, the natural resource unit has $20,000 in operating funds. And so we use that money traditionally for everything else the unit does. So that's where we're buying gloves for volunteers. That's where we bought the beaver baffle that was in Sparrow Pond, originally. That's where we're buying. Now, there is now some money in it for deer management. We sometimes are pulling from for like fencing and deer protection, buck rub, but traditionally we were buying buck rub protection out of our operating budget. And so that's plants from our Sangha. As you know, we grow a lot of plants in-house at our native plant nursery where we have volunteers helping with seed collection and with propagation. So there's certainly a cost in staff time and a cost in volunteer time, but that native plant reintroducing is pretty much driven by volunteers, and the cost is gloves and hours. Shovels.
Snacks.
Sweat.
So one of the things that, and the reason why both Jen and Eric are going to be presenting, at the same time is it's very related. And when we'll be talking a little bit more about the CIP, but it is not just invasive spending. And, to your slide 4, it's habitat restoration. All these pieces work together. And that's one aspect of it. But to your point too, that the reintroduction of additional native plants and trying to restore some of that ecological balance is it's all of a part.
It's definitely something where part of it was that Save the Best First, we started our work 10 or 15 years ago in the natural resource conservation areas. And, while the climate change was gathering, and the deer pressure was increasing. I think at the time it was a little less immediate stressors that we were experiencing. And so we were able to do invasive plant management and, things pretty much just grew back. We were also starting with the areas that had the fewest invasive plants, had the healthiest soils, had the least disturbance, were the most resilient. By now, now that we're getting into the worst last category of what we're tackling, there are huge gaps in the canopy in these parks. There's big areas where there are no trees, or there's like one straggling tree that was trying to grow through the bush honeysuckle and all the vines. So the need to do that reintroduction and that uplift is a lot stronger. And I also just think overall, the stresses from climate change have gotten tougher. We're losing oaks, like oak decline, losing oaks in the middle of the woods, and then that canopy gap, making sure that comes back. Losing species from various reasons, from different diseases and pests that have come through. We're really just struggling to. That ideally we wouldn't have to go out there and replant our forests. They should just regenerate. But with all the stresses that are going on, definitely becomes part of the equation.
And the letters that we have sent in the past, as well as the Park and Rec Commission letters, were focused very much on that long-term time horizon. You can't just do it piecemeal, that it has to be that long-term commitment. And the whole concept of the natural capital, that it has to be this long-term investment. The onesie twosies things just doesn't do it. So anyway, that was.
Can I ask a question about the budget? Could you put that last slide up?
Do you want like these spreadsheet slides? Or?
Then there was one more because it looked like the budget kept going up into the 300s. It's just a question about long-term planning for funding. So the last slide you had, that one, the totals go up into the 300s. My understanding is you have 109 plus a 100 top up.
This slide shows with projected CIP, if the proposed CIP funding
would come with it. Okay.
This is where we're bringing everything to management and have sufficient funds. And this was, some of these I may be like, oh, let's start this park a year later to spread out.
I think it's just me flagging, there's clearly an increased need for money. And so just flagging that's like something for the commission to be thinking about in terms of how we think about pitching things and moving things forward. It's going to, because there's going to be a big gap. Yeah. If you don't get the CIP money, or even if you get some of it or whatever.
Yeah, if I don't get the CIP money, basically we're going back to where we were 6-7 years ago and losing all the progress we've made.
Right.
And part of that's, if I return to the base budget, would I really completely drop all those parks? I don't know. But I would definitely be spreading, I would have to drop some of them because I just can't really spread it so thin. And then, so whether it becomes one-time funding year after year or through some other mechanism that Eric is here to discuss, that's, we can just not start additional land, but there's land we've already started that I would just hate.
Right, and just flagging that's going to be something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Along that funding discussion vein, so the last few years have been just one-time funding. Is that through the budget?
Yes, so
Okay.
we have put in a request for additional funds, and then with support from groups like this one and the Parks and Rec Commission and others, the county has been able to provide that additional one-time funds each year.
But as we noted in our previous letters, over a period of about 10 years, it stayed static. And, you know, went up just a teeny tiny bit. And so it really messes with this kind of plan on what you're able to do if you don't have that sense of.
Basically, in around, I want to say 2022, 2021, 22, I was looking at this and I was getting projections for all the parks we had not yet brought into management and how much, estimates of how much it would cost to do each park's very rough, but like, okay, this will cost about $25,000 the first year. Some of the parks were like 50,000 the first year, which was, you know, half my annual budget. And I was also, as I was projecting out in the future, I was like, 95% of my budget was going to go to maintenance, and I was never going to be able to bring those additional lands into. And that's why we started getting that additional funding. But now that we've started all this additional land, we gotta stay on it.
And on that vein, so you have this projected out to FY 2032. Is that the horizon that the CIP is proposed to fund you to? And is this going to be like another conversation we're gonna have to have in 2032 about why this is important again?
Actually, we're going to have it every 2 years.
Well, yeah, more frequently probably. And
But
it's
maybe
just,
not every year, like every
Yeah.
2 years instead of every
I'm getting to the
year,
point where like, maybe we should think about like, how do we build strategy to like,
Eric can better answer that question, but I believe the CIP is out to 2036.
Yeah, so 10
Six.
years.
36. I just have my giant spreadsheet. I think I started making these big tweaks to it back in, and I added 10 years at the time back in 2021, 22. And so I just haven't added additional years onto it.
So I have two observations. The first is that the one-time top-up funding, as welcome as it's been consistently $100,000, everything else has been going up in price, right? So it has been eaten away by inflation every single year. So it is not worth as much as it was when the county first started doing it.
And one of the costs that I am facing, and I did try my best to factor in, though it's a little bit of an unknown, is we have been using the same contract and same contractor and the same contract prices for the last 8 or 9 years. Because that contract has not fundamentally renewed. And it is going, we run Fairfax's county contract, but that contract, that 8 or 9 years of work on the same cost that they proposed 9 years ago is ending this year. And so Fairfax County will be hiring a new invasive contractor, will probably be writing that contract. I cannot imagine anybody is going to charge the same for labor or herbicide, anything that they charged 9 years ago. So I expected costs to go when the contract went up. And so I did try to factor those increased contractor costs, but I'm guessing at how much they're going to raise their prices, whoever we hire, you know.
The other question I was going to ask is I was actually going to go in that direction. I mean, the county's been using IPC now for years and years. Assuming that what we hope for comes to pass and there is this sustained surge of money that goes into invasive plants, do the existing contractors, IPC, whoever it is the county ends up using, have the capacity to do this at the same time when, I mean, IPC is, I mean, they work kind of up and down the East Coast. They do enormous amount of work in Fairfax County, much larger counties than us. Do they have the kind of capacity to take on that level of work? Or are we going to looking at additional contractors, additional?
Whatever contractor we use, one of the things that, again, from my perspective, it's useful if I can say for that contractor, over the next 5 years, we expect to have this much money that we're going to be using to work in the parks. And if I'm like, this year I have suddenly twice as much money, next year I don't know if I have, half as much money. It's harder for whatever contract we're working with to make sure they have the capacity over the long range. I do believe that our contractor would have that capacity, partly because there was that 1 year where we got an additional 300 and we were able to spend it all. Though I think actually we could spend the last like $10,000 of it or something like that. But yeah, I think we do have the capacity, but it's definitely much easier for them to build the staff And like, since we've started getting this one-time funding for a few years now, we now have a crew that pretty much only works in Arlington. And sometimes they go out to Fairfax, and sometimes the Fairfax crew or somebody will come here, but having that same crew on the ground year after year in the same parks, whatever company it is also, it doesn't have to be forever, but at least for several years definitely does just build that knowledge in the system.
Yeah, Noreen.
You might have talked about this before I came in, so if so, we can talk offline, but is there any talk about having volunteers be able to apply herbicides and stuff?
That is not part of what I talked about, so you didn't miss anything. We recently, I know our park steward, the Master Naturalist Park Steward Leadership Group has met with Fairfax to talk about how it's going for Fairfax in terms of having volunteers apply herbicide. And they've recently, like about a week ago, sent me, like sort of write-up of what they found. And I think it's something we're going to explore in the future. I don't think it would ever replace having consistent contractor funding. And I don't think any of the volunteers want to be out there with a backpack, 8 hours a day.
It might take a little.
But
And Fairfax is not using backpacks. They're just.
yeah, and so the custom work, I do think there could be a role for it in Arlington. Some of the places it's we're just looking at it, talking. Yeah, we're sort of exploring this. At this point, I would say we're exploring it. We're open to it.
So just for background, that was the legislative authority to do that was given 2 years ago. And it was increased for state properties in this
year.
legislative session. So
They realized they hadn't allowed it for state land.
Just a quick item for the record, because we've looked at the inflation issue since 2012 when it started. But not for a few years. So 45% since 2012. So we've had price control up until this year. But what we got for $100, 2012, it's going to cost 145 to get the same thing. That's a generic inflation figure. It might not
Out of
apply.
the contractor.
It might not apply exactly to this function with these contractors, but once you release a contract from the fixed prices that they've been working under, who knows? It could be significantly higher to get the same thing done.
Mhm.
And many other county functions have had to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's just something that you have to deal with. It doesn't mean that you should give up on the cause. It just means you have to find a way.
Out of curiosity, how much of the work is different?
Infinite.
Infinite.
I'm just curious how much of that, how much of that risk factor is there in terms of a reliance on volunteers?
So the volunteer program has been expanding. I have more hours every year. It's all amazing. I would say when I started about in 2020, we had 6 sites that had regular invasive removal and restoration events. Now there are well over 15. I want to say about 20 sites where we're doing this. There's, everybody's still struggling to pull volunteers to these events, but I definitely think that is something which we can continue to rely on. How that weighs compares to the number of hours the contractor works, it's just that they're doing different work is what I would say. So, yeah, and I know actually more about, I could go back and calculate how many hours the contractors in the parks, but I honestly, I know.
No, I'm just curious how much that needs to be sort of a consideration in terms of long-term.
Yeah, I think that if all the volunteers disappeared or if the contractors disappeared,
They both do something. together.
yeah.
That I
They
know.
supplement each other.
And I've heard great. It just makes me wonder where the risk is.
I also have to give a shout out to Jen and Sue Kim, who are 2 of the best volunteer managers.
Yes.
They do an awesome job of communication and clear instructions and feedback. And anyway, I just, kudos to you guys.
Well, if we have such good volunteers, then
It's hard to do. volunteer management is challenging and you guys are doing that. Thank you.
I second that.
So thank you very much
You're
for being here. And now perfect timing for Eric Beach to tell us all about the CIP and how we can think long-term in the CIP. You want to sit up here? Yeah. We'll move over.
The hot seat.
The hot seat, yes. We'll just be real cozy here, Eric. If you don't mind.
We've done this before, so. All right, let's make sure I get this shared appropriate. It. Station mode, if people choose to go. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Hello, I'm Eric Beach. For folks that don't know me, I think I've met a good bunch of you before. I'm the Park Development Division Chief for the Department of Parks and Recreation. Our division, our little corner of Parks and Rec, we do sort of the long-term planning. Some of you folks were at the Public Space Master Plan meeting last night, and so we manage sort of our vision for the Parks Department, the park system, as well as the sort of design and construction for that vision. So we do the design work and then build out the parks. We also renovate the parks, and so the way we manage our renovations and our investment is through the 10-year CIP. For folks, I'm assuming everyone has a pretty good understanding. You're on the commission, probably talked about this in the past. 10-year plan is adopted every other year by the county board. That plan lays out, kind of said this, but the 10-year vision for where we're going to put our investment into the park system. One thing to note is that as part of the CIP, when the board considers this and then adopts it in July, they approve essentially the first 2 years of funding. That funding is placed on the fall referendum that the voters vote on. If that's approved, then that money is available for parks to go ahead and make the improvements to the system. The remaining 8 years are the plan. You should see, if we're doing our job right, the things that are in the 8 years of this plan should the next CIP forward and then be that year and kind of lays out our path forward. The CIP is receives the same type of pressure that you've heard about in our operating budget and things like this. There are parameters in which the CIP is developed. One of the big ones is keeping our yearly debt service for the county under 10% of the annual operating budget. So this plan is proposed by the manager, meets those parameters, some other financial ones that the board has policy on. And so the proposing a budget that is balanced with certain amount of county being able to spend a certain amount in every year for the next 10 years. And again, the parks part is about a $280 million investment plan for 10 years. That is balanced. It's a several $billion-dollar CIP. We are balanced against buying fire trucks and police cruisers and technology investment and upkeep of all our buildings across, whether it's fire stations or health facilities and things like that. So it's sort of a balance of how all of these different things can fit together over 10 years. One of the things I will mention, and I have a couple of dates that I'll have to follow, Caroline, if that's okay. We on Tuesday, June 2nd, the department is having our work session with the county board. It's from 4, so we'll go and we'll present maybe a little bit expanded version of what you see tonight to the board for them to ask us questions, make decisions, and then kind of think about how they want to proceed with the managed proposed budget. There is a commission meeting for work session for the county board. I don't have that date. I think it's June 23rd or something like that, but we can. Okay, so that's something that's another way for commissioners to get their input into those. If I'm sounding a little hoarse, this is about the 4th version of this presentation. I actually just came from the sports commission. I hit end and I came down here, so you're on the last legs of the road show. So I apologize if my voice is getting a little bit cracked here. I will go pretty quick. I know you guys have a pretty full agenda. There's a couple areas I'm assuming, given the conversation we just heard, that I have some information hopefully will help Jen out in her program. Actually may answer a couple of questions that you guys were asking in that, and I'll try to remember to address those. When we approach, at least for the Parks Department, when we approach the CIP, we try to set out some pillars of which we're looking at our investment. Some of those, the four main ones are that we try to continue existing projects and commitments. So that means things that are already underway or have been in the CIP in the past. So there's not a whole lot of new things in the CIP. Most of them you've seen before, or people who watch the CIP enthusiasts will have seen these before, and they shouldn't be a surprise. We tried this year particularly because there's a massive focus from the county, particularly from the managed post CIP with the board, is keeping up with our program, with the replacement of our equipment and our assets, and keeping things in a state of good repair rather than investing in new kind of things. We try to adhere to our guidance, public spaces master plan. Really probably do need to add the forestry natural resource plan to this. And we look at the equity and how we distribute our projects and making sure we're investing wisely across the county. We're not in one location for a long time. We're spreading it out. Let's see. A little bit of delay. Here we go. So one of the things I like to set it up with, parks does a lot. We have 147 parks. We have 55 rectangular fields. We've got 43 diamond fields. We've got 7 community gardens, 54 miles of trails, 25 restrooms, thousands of picnic tables, benches, grills, and other things across the park system. It is a very large pool of things that we have to make sure we're keeping in good condition, safe condition, and a usable state. The way we do that, this is sort of tip of the tools that we use to do that. There is a logic. We're not just picking things. We have what we call our asset tool. Our asset tool is every 4 to 5 years, we work with a company who goes out and looks at every single piece of equipment in our parks. So it looks at the benches, at the batting cages, looks at our fields, looks at our playgrounds, and assesses it for its condition and its remaining useful life. So we have an idea when things are coming to the end from a safety perspective. Now, doesn't grab everything because a tree will fall on something. Obviously, that moved up in the order, but basically there's an assessment done for all our equipment. Synthetic fields, we look at those primarily around their conditions and their warranty at the end of their warranty, which tends to be 8 to 10 years. But the most important thing is GMAX, which is acceleration test. People always get a chuckle. It's basically something the size of a bowling ball. It's dropped from a certain height. If it bounces high enough, it's safe. If it doesn't, it is unsafe to play on. It basically represents a child's head bouncing off the ground. So we have to try to make sure we're maintaining safety there. Our trails, we go through, we drive a little machine over all our trails. It has lasers and cameras. It assesses the conditions of the trails as far as like cracking and riffles and that kind of thing. We do that every 4 or 5 years as well. In our bridges, we actually have to hire engineer experts that go out and assess all our pedestrian bridges and all our low water fords, which are the ones that cut down into the stream, but allows the vehicle to drive over. We do those as well every 4 to 5 years. That starts to build a picture of where we need to make our investment. I won't spend a lot of time. Just as a quick highlight, we've invested $62 million, almost $63 million since 2022 in renovating our parks and playgrounds and things. We spent almost $18 million on our synthetic program, about $6 million in our trail and bridge program. We renovated about 7.5 miles of trails. And I won't go through all the bridges. I have a slide that's a little bit more later on, but we've done a number of bridge replacements and ford replacements. Those are particularly becoming more complex. It's not just about getting people across those and keeping the trail system connected. We are also starting to get into stream bank restoration and other things improving, because that bridges, you see a lot of deterioration from all the stormwater and things like that. So that program has expanded to be able to address that. One of the ways I talked a little bit about our how we assess the physical condition. So our asset assessment, what we call, is made up of 2 things. It is the physical condition assessment that I mentioned earlier. Several years ago, we added an activity factor to that. So we evaluate every zip code for the greatest ethnic diversity, household density, number of children, and average income. And the idea is that we pair that with our condition assessment, so that neighborhoods that have a combination of those things and have parks in the poorest conditions should get the priority investment for us. So it's a way of looking at bringing improvements to the neighborhoods that need them the most. And then we talked a little bit about how we, with our master plans and other engagements, how we try to do things, not just the evening meeting, but we're doing pop-ups and we're doing things in different languages in order to try to get out and really understand what the users are looking for in our system. This slide is not meant to be read. I sent the slider, the presentation already, so you'll be able to get that. It'll be posted. This is just to show you when we take the condition of the asset and the equity score, which each total 100, so we would have possibly a combined 100, total of 200. We have all our parks. These are all 147 parks, so we know where they are on the list and what may be a priority for renovation. Things on the top left, I think the top score is 176, just because I've seen this so many times now. And the one on the bottom is probably in the low 50s. And so this gives us an idea of where we're going to go. So we're not just picking things. This is one piece of that puzzle because again, there's some certain parks that have a bigger use pressure, or you might have a storm that changes things on here. What I can say, what I've kind of described is everything on the bottom right, which is our lowest assessed parks between the condition and the equity, we've addressed almost all the bottom 25 of those. So we are really working in the top right column, top of the right column and the bottom of the middle column. And so the idea is we're just plugging through this until we be able to catch up. Now, at some point that starts over because things get older and you go through, but this is a way to keep it organized as how we look at this. Real quick, boring number stuff. Our CIP is made up of essentially 5 programs. It's more of a title for each category, but just so you can understand, our parks master plans are the parks that we have pretty heavy investment in because those are the ones we're going through. We may need rearranging things. There's some reflection of community needs or where trends are going. Parks maintenance capital is generally a one-for-one kind of replacement when things have aged. We have our synthetic field program, a land acquisition program, and a trail and bridge modernization program. The chart on the right is the main takeaway from that of our $280 million proposed CIP. We have over $20 million that are in outside funding. It's not, that means the funds are not coming from the county's basis. And so we have about $14 million in developer contributions that folks, folks in this committee, when they're doing site plans and there's a contribution, that comes to the parks for us to be able to develop our parks. We have other funding, which is our partnerships with like Marymount and GW and APS. And then we have a $1.8 million earmark grant, and I'll talk a bit more about that. Past accomplishments, we've opened a new park at Arlington Junction. We've replaced our fields. We have just opened the Walter Reed pickleball facility. We've got trail work and track work and just some of the things we've done over the last few years. This is getting into now the sort of the meat of what our proposal is. And so I'll walk through these. I'll go fairly briskly. I may not read all the numbers. I'm assuming folks can see that. We saw our CIP really begins with that asset study that I talked about. And so we have funding to do that asset study in FY27 because that needs to be refreshed to reflect the current system. We have a equipment line in here for 100,000 for 27 and 28, a little bit over. That replaces our bike racks, our exercise bikes, our treadmills, those kind of things inside our buildings, keeps those in a state of repair as they wear out. And then we have a small bucket of money, what we call feasibility studies. This allows us to react to parks finds itself sort of on the back end of a lot of decision making going on in the county, not in a bad way, but a site plan is approved. And then something comes out and says, hey, are you going to plan now that this is adjacent to this building? Or, hey, APS is doing something, you need to plan this. An example, real-time example, I believe there's a site plan right now, the Virginia Hospital Center on Carlin Springs Road is looking at doing some work there. That site plan may or may not be approved, but if it's approved, it's a question, okay, are you going to do some planning around the park and this kind of thing? This is the bucket of money that allows us to do that if a decision is made to do that. So this keeps us being able to be nimble and be able to address those sort of real-time requests that we've got. Moving along, our pooled park projects is reflective of our idea to keep things up instead of having to get a full replacement. So we have done last year, we did our safety servicing replacement on playgrounds. We bunched several together to do. This year, this is for addressing inside of our restrooms. So we are taking multiple restrooms, and these buildings have good bones, good roofs. They do not need to be replaced, but our restrooms take a lot of abuse. And so this is getting in, replacing toilets and sinks, new tile, that kind of stuff to keep it fresh and not someplace that you really don't want to be when you really probably need it. So we try to keep those in good shape. Douglas Park Phase 2, we have already done some work and we are working on what we call Phase 1, which is the more natural side of Douglas Park, if you will, gazebos, plantings, things like this. This is for the second phase, which is the playground. And the other side, the more the gathering area of this $2.4 million, this has a $1.85 million earmark from Congress that we are using to pay for the majority of this project. Getting into some of our more, a little bit more of the projects are a little bit farther out, starting in 28 and beyond. Glee Road Park is one that we are looking at doing a renovation at. This funds design money for that. The courts up there really do need to be addressed, but the main issue with that is folks that are familiar, that park's a multi-level park. DDA is not good. There's a lot of stairs and steps in there. The playground was in a flood zone on the bottom and had to be removed. And so this for us to be able to get in and address that facility. The Gunston Park restroom, I'm not sure if folks have to use those facilities down there, the fields. We're looking at replacing the restroom there. It is in very bad shape. This one is one that the bones can't be fixed. It was sort of built on a temporary basis. I've had this conversation in a lot of settings now. People look at $1 million to do a restroom. So we'll talk about that. We have moved in the past. We have built restrooms from scratch. If we were to go that direction, meaning we bring in an architect and we have a contractor to build this from the ground up, the price here would probably be about $1.5 million. We have moved to using prefabricated restrooms. We have one going to Lazy Woods. We have one going into Bluemont. This is a way to save money. These are pre-architectured. They're built off site and then they're shipped and they're assembled on site. But to explain it, you purchased a restroom for $350,000. These are direct quote. These are direct costs from the manufacturer. Installation is $312,000. You have $50,000 to $100,000 in utilities. You have the staff costs. You have permitting costs, and then you have escalation at 28. It's $1 million project. And these are the costs of doing business. And I just like to talk about this one because it's a shocking number. I do not disagree. But that is the cost of providing these kind of facilities in the county. Happy to take questions.
Could you, so you said it's between $50,000 and $100,000 for utility.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it really is. It really depends on the connections that are being made. And I estimate higher on this one, 100,000, because when we just put what's now being called the Gunston 10 in there, I do know for a fact that sewer line is backed up and has cracks in it to the street. And so that is going to have to be a full depth in replacement all the way to the street there. So I am not going to estimate low on that particular case.
So when these sorts of maintenance projects come up, you're not just looking at the structure, you're looking at all the connections underground and all of that. So that's what's built in.
Exactly.
Okay.
So instead of the $1 million bus stop, kind of thing on your bathroom.
I believe I was just quoted.
And the sewer line and everything.
I believe I was just quoted in an article. It was very fair. It was a very fair and balanced article. Okay, so we just did this one. Moving along, we have some of our projects that we're getting into that are in various stages of master plan design. We have a renovation of Gateway Park. We board adopted a master plan last year. We are getting ready to sign a design contract. There's a fair amount of developer funding in this one, contributing $13 million to the project. It's more like 18 because it's several different developers. And so there is funding to go to construction for that project. Drew Park is one we are currently have had several engagements with the Valley Civic Association and other residents that came. This is to go and refurbish Drew Park and make improvements there. Crystal City Metro Market Square is a park on the corner of Crystal Drive and 18th. There is a brand new metro station opening soon on that corner. We received this property from a developer, and so this is to come in on the backside and develop parks for Crystal City. They've been seeing significant development. This is the ability to start to begin to put some public space to that area. Penrose Square, there's an existing plaza park gathering area on Columbia Pike near the Giant. For folks that are familiar with the area, there is a sort of vacant building now in a parking lot where CVS was adjacent to this. The master plan for Penrose Square has always considered this parcel and the adjacent parcel to be the final park shape for Columbia Pike, as well as the form-based code plans that are there. That building was approved this year or just at the very end of 25, and they are going forward. So they will be providing us that space as part of their contribution to the county as far as the development there. So this is funding to come in and design and build that expansion of the park for Penrose Square. The Arlington Boathouse, FY 28-29 is the construction funding. It is about $15 million. FY 34 is the remainder for the upper site. Project has been going on as long as I've been here. I've been here 27 years now. And so we have had some steps in the last few years. We signed a programmatic agreement with National Park Service in 2019. We have just sent the letter for an LOI for signature by the Arlington Boathouse Foundation, who has agreed to do fundraising for this project, similar to our Kenmore, where we had some outside partners. So this is for the construction. We're getting ready to start our master planning and our community work with this one. I hope it's middle of this year, early fall on this work. Moving to our synthetic turf program, we have several fields coming up in FY27, the Longbridge fields. The one on the left is field 1. That is a 50-50 cost share with Marymount University. The field on the right is fully the county's to replace. It simply amazes me that we're on our 3rd replacement because I've done getting the first one installed there, and it's kind of mind-blowing. The next ones in FY28 are the Gunston rectangular field and the Gunston diamond field to be replaced. If you notice, that is the same year as the restroom, so the plan is to have one project to do all those. Hopefully, we'll pick up some cost savings, but that will get that done in one period of time. Moving to some of the more out year projects, there's no fancy pictures here because these are a little bit farther out, and there's several CIPs that will still need to be adopted before we get to them. Quincy Park has a line item for planning, design, and construction. That is a replacement of all the things at Quincy Park. This is also exploring adding a potential parking structure there, maybe something like at the Heights where the top of it could be used for expanded purposes to help bring in some additional use space, just a better use of having pavement parking lot at Quincy Park. Shortbridge Park we had a master plan developed about 5 years ago. I think that was approved by the county board. This is a funding to see that construction through. This is a park that's at the corner of Lee Road and Route 1. Basically, it's on 4 Mile Run, 4 Mile Run itself. It is adjacent to the stream there. Showing the courthouse sector plan. It's not really an ask for the CIP. This is money that's been aggregated from development in this area, and it's to improve the parking lot, the landscaping, the connections out here in front of this building. Shirlington Park is a remnant of the 4 Mile Run Valley plan that was approved several years ago. We went through, we developed Jenny Dean Park. Shirlington Park is to develop the piece of land that's to improve the piece of land across from the dog park upstream. It's a sort of a nature-based park with softer trails and overlooks of the water and things like that to be able to get people closer to the stream itself. Fairfax Drive Public Spaces is a line item for design and construction of park that was identified in the clear sector update that was approved by the board, I think 2 years ago. That is to turn the street area angled parking that's between St. Charles Church and I always want to call it Peak off. Yeah, I forget the north side. Yeah. Northside Social, thank you. We have a small property at the end called Triangle Park, and we have a little maintenance shop there. So this is the idea is that entire road area between the two would become one large park in the middle of that area. Crystal City Parks and Public Spaces. This is a sort of an earmark for money in 33 and 35. It's $1 million for planning and design, and 35 is $500 million for construction. Crystal City is a very tough space to work. It's very fluid, dynamic because Parks does not really own any property in Crystal City. So we rely on the development that provides spaces or easements for us to build on. That park, no, we didn't pay for that one, but for example, that Met Park is an easement and that we're able to develop, have public use of. That is always moving around. And so this is earmarked for any spaces that could be identified in the future, or Center Park. Center Park is a space that is, I am losing the location, but 1801 and 1901 were just site plans for adaptive reuse that came through. They're adjacent to that area. And this is for improvement to that park, sort of old dated 80s park that's in the middle there. Langston Boulevard is really merely a placeholder. This was last year, Langston Boulevard plan was adopted. They identified several locations for public space. Those public spaces are not in county control or ownership right now. This is just a commitment that when those are put there may be some money to go ahead and develop that space and plan. Virginia Highlands and the nearby public spaces is Virginia Highlands and 18th and Ives and Dominion, 2 locations where we bought property. This is to go in and renovate Virginia Highlands Park, the large facility that we have there. New park at 26 and Old Dominion. New park's a little bit of a misnomer, but this is a result of the planning work the county had done around the salt dome. There's still some resolution there. I think needs to be gotten to, but this is a placeholder for money to be able to go and follow through with commitments made at that location. And the last one is Barcroft Park. This is essentially, except for the one we're going to talk about in a minute, the Barcroft Park is essentially the only new thing you would see in the CIP. But this is rather than going in and doing a full renovation of Barcroft Park. Barcroft Park was done 25 years ago. This is to be able to replace the natural turf fields and irrigation and update the cracked sidewalks and batting cages and restrooms that are in that park. So it's more of a refresh, if you will, rather than a full rebuild of Barcroft Park. Okay. So kind of moving towards the end here. The emerging uses program are 3 programs within this category. Emerging uses program it was started 2 years ago when the natural resiliency program started. It is not a placeholder, but it is identification money for the Parks Department to be able to deal with trends and pressures that come up. I will just say pickleball a couple years ago was not a thing. We had a ton of pressure to deal with pickleball, but the general way that things work is we say, okay, we have a new thing. Talk about it in the CIP, you get to input year 10, and then you have the year of planning and year design and year construction. So 13 years later, you're dealing with this new pressure that is driving everybody crazy, or maybe making everybody happy. And so this is a way for us to be able to address these things at a little bit more real time. And so, for example, we are getting ready here in the fall to come out with our natural trail surface study. There may be some things coming out, a way of focusing so it is not as impactful to the overall park system and some of the environmental impacts it has around mountain biking or pickleball. There may be some ways to isolate that. This will be a source of funding to be able to do it. Those are just examples. There's no solid plan for that, but it is a way for us to address immediate issues that generally take many years just because the way county funding works. Natural Resiliency and Habitat Restoration Program. This year's the Natural Resiliency Program. This year, we've obviously known everybody's interest in invasive management and other things. We've heard a lot of advocacy from groups like this and Parks and Rec. And so this program was expanded to be the Natural Resiliency and Habitat Restoration Program. This was changed to an every other year funding source. And essentially what that means is that there is $250,000 every year being allocated for the management and habitat restoration, management of invasive species, and then the habitat restoration of those lands, a staff position, and then $250,000 for our natural resiliency portion to continue to deal with our stormwater management, our stream bank erosion, and flood resiliency projects. That is funded every year. I will say part of the conversation when I walked in was the CIP is adopted every 2 years. So generally, once we're in a CIP, it's pretty secure because that means the board had an interest in it. But there will still be approval every 2 years. The one good thing that I can say is that our money, when it's in the CIP, is escalated at 3% every year. So that 250 becomes, somebody there at math, 250 plus 3%, and the next year, and then 250 plus 6% the year after. So there is an escalation factor there for dealing with things like new contract needs and things like that in this budget. I'm not sure how much Jen you went into. This will allow us to address all of our natural lands that are contained within the park system, plus some additional properties. So hopefully this is a good injection of energy and budget and staff into the invasive management and habitat restoration. I'll pause for a second.
Well, everybody said, yay, amen. Thank you for the recognition.
Has to get
So
passed.
I will say one of the big things that changed this year is that the capitalization, ability to capitalize this kind of program. In the past, and this is my super simple explanation, bonds are generally things that have like a 20-year lifespan, and they have to have a certain amount of basically turnover to that point, be a maintenance kind of thing. But the way to look at it is county sells bonds to pay for this, and then we pay that back. If we default on that loan, those bonds, the banks could repossess our fire trucks, our police cars, our playground equipment technically. Financial institutions have never really looked at things like invasive management or watering as capital investment. but there has been an argument in the industry kind of moving that towards you are investing in capital stuff because you're protecting your capital assets by doing this. So this was the first year we were able to make that argument, and we're successful with that here. So that's just a little bit to note that that was a change and that was the ability for us to get this into the program this year.
Do we clap now?
We actually clap for you guys because everybody had such a big part of that. So I'll finish up here. The Park Sports Court and Parking Lot Program is a funded every other year kind of program that allows us to go through and renovate our sports courts with new asphalt, new line paints and lines, as well as improve our parking lots and serve our parks. These have traditionally been operating kind of costs, but things are going up, and those projects now are $80,000-$100,000 to repave a parking lot. They have moved into the capital program, and so it's a way to ensure we're able to keep those facilities going.
Is Blue Mountain under that, or is that Blue Mountain's separate project?
Blue Mountain separate project, and Blue Mountain is already funded, so it's not in this CIP at all. Our last couple programs are trail and pedestrian bridge work. This is a $50 million program that's funded every other year, as well as our synthetic turf program. We talked a lot about that, and land acquisition. I'll go pretty quick here because I have some slides on these I want to share. On our bridges and our fords, we have been moving through a lot of these lately. We have multiple bridges in design. We've got about 4 that will be in construction this year. Same with the low water fords. We have 1 in design, 1 construction, and then we have a several plan for 28. I think a couple of key things from this slide is that you can see we talked about our trail condition is done every 4 or 5 years. We inspect every 6 to 8 years on our bridges. And except for Gateway, it has to be done every 2 because it's a VDOT bridge. The trails, with that program, our goal is to pave 1 to 2 miles of trails every year until we reach a pavement condition of 86. It's the same kind of pavement condition people use on the roads. Our current index is 81. What that means is we had several trails in the port group, which was 0 to 70 basically. We have taken care of all those. I think we may have 1 or 2 in fair, but the majority of our trails are good and excellent. And so we're still striving to push that number up to 86. This program allows us to do that. This is just there are other groups that have different kinds of interests. This is our synthetic turf program. This is how we map it out over 10 years so we can program our investment. We know where we're spending the money. There's also no surprises. So you can see Long Bridge is at 27 and Gunston's at 28. And then we know Virginia Highlands is coming up next. It's just the way we manage that program. Parkland acquisition program. We have a goal for the 2019 Public Spaces Master Plan to purchase 30 acres over 10 years. We have been able to outright purchase 15.9009 acres since 2019, and we've added almost 9.5 acres through easements. And so we are at about 24.5 acres that we've been able to add to the public system since 2019. So we are well on our way. We're about 6.5 years into that goal right now. And we've hit the 24.5. It's just a map. It's a little bit hard to see up here. Watch this out. This is a map you'll be able to see when you look at the presentation of where all these purchases were located or easements. And last slide, this is just a year-by-year map of our $286 million proposed CIP. You can see the columns are by year. And that generally, we're looking to kind of keep those balanced, but you'll see some years are higher, 162, and the lowest 13. A lot of times what's going on there, other aspects of the county have a heavy investment in, for example, 32. And so Parks' ability to program money there, it's a little less that year, but that flow maps out to the 2.86 million. And then this also allows you to see that where our developer contributions are programmed in what year, our other funding sources and things like that. I think that's it.
Wow.
So now we have fun.
Yeah, now we have fun.
Wonder is place this crap.
Are there questions? Yes.
2 quick questions. In terms of land acquisition, that's terrific. That's identified as a priority in our plan. Places too. Just real in a nutshell, how do you go about picking what spots to purchase?
So we actually, as part of the adoption in 2019 of the Public Spaces Master Plan, there's a land acquisition appendix in there. And there is a series, it's part of our conversations there, but also sort of identifying areas that seem to be important. So we've begun acquiring land around. There are priority maps, so there are circles. You can go to that document and look and see where those parcels are. We also have a set of criteria, acquisition criteria. So we get people that come to us all the time and ask about properties. And so we are able to put that through that set of criteria and see if we can make a solid recommendation to the county board for acquisition. Most of the acquisitions that are there are things, there are multiple categories. Some are for infill of existing parks, some are in natural resource locations, some are in the historical section. And so there's a variety of different ways we're looking at how to prioritize those acquisitions.
So is that separate from like buying the property for stormwater purposes? It's a whole nother account thing.
It is. So our land acquisition funds, the one that's the program of CIP, generally purchase those properties that are adding to the park system, right? And the stormwater price could add to the park system, but they're paid for in the stormwater fund, which is a fund that all residents are paying into. And DES manages those. We are looking at in the vision of the public spaces master plan to see how they intersect and maybe how those inventories work together. And so that is a conversation that we're going to be having in the next couple of months as part of that.
Just real quick, one other question. We're mindful of the recent kerfuffle about the plan to close the gymnastic site. I'm seeing 28 million bucks for a boathouse, and as cool as that's going to be, and I have a good friend who's a rower, there aren't that many rowers in Arlington. So I could imagine how much invasive plant work could be done with 28 million bucks. So I guess my question is that a done deal because it's federally approved and everything's been signed off on, or is that fungible still?
So everything in CIP is subject to public input and the board's decision-making process. If you look back at where I kind of started, our work in the CIP way we assemble is to kind of keep following the commitments that have been made. The boathouse has been in the last 6 CIPs. Can't say how large it is. There's a fair amount of advocacy around the boathouse. Board understands that, and it has been a project that they have been willing to support each CIP. But everything in the CIP is subject to a conversation.
One thing I will say about the boathouse, because when we were dealing with the master plan, the 4 years we spent doing that, there was a lot of, especially the consultants would comment like, you are next to a river and you have no access to this river.
So we do have access. It's just across the dam bridge.
Yeah.
The kids can walk across.
Yes. So anyway, but that was kind of like, that was a big part of the discussion during the development of 2019 public space master plan as well. So there was, I mean, they've been going for 25, 30 years talking about this and all of the different iterations of it and all of the different EIAs and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just on 4 Mile Road, they used to put the kayak on.
Yeah, and they spent years doing that too.
And I will say, not to sort of place a defense for the project. Just that way. To Carolyn's point, that there are multiple priorities in the public space master plan about giving access to Arlington residents to the water. One of the drivers, I think, on the department side for the boathouse is that boathouse would be an ability to have a kayak and other kind of connection to the water for Arlington County residents. There is also the competitive part of that, and it's a combination. So there is multiple objectives happening with the boathouse. I think from our perspective, it just depends on sort of where you are and what your priority is for the project. People look at it differently, but I don't think I would look at it as it's a sole use, because I think one of the big things is getting Arlington residents access to the water, whether they're competitive rowers or if they just want to go down and launch a kayak or a canoe or something.
Walk around Teddy Roosevelt.
Or what?
Or walk around Teddy Roosevelt, which I've done many times. $28 million, you can do a lot of invasive management.
Yeah, I guess since we're still on this slide, I have 2 questions. We don't need to spend a ton of time on them because I know there's a lot of content we went through. But could you just explain to me real quick what a gift, like the line items that have negative reduce the park acreage, and then specifically the VDOT purchase at 7.5 acres. Can you just explain that too? Because are we kind of like double counting what that's happening there? I just don't understand what that specific instance is. Again, you don't have to spend.
So the VDOT parcel, the 7 acres, was actually, I think, a really excellent opportunity for the county. It was a piece of property that the VDOT owned up in North Arlington. It was part of they had reserved it as a part potentially future ability to make a connection across the river. And so they own that. They put that on the market, but they came to the county and offered it to us first.
And this is very near Pemmon Run.
Yep, it's very near Permanent Run. It is treed and that kind of thing. So the county was able to buy that off the market, if you will, from VDOT directly. And so there is very, a lot of our purchases, I'll be honest, and this is, when we go through the board, I think we buy things because it's gonna become a ball field or it's gonna be added to a park. This was a purchase of a purely forested type of area. And so it was a great addition, we thought, to our inventory. There is probably some work that needs to be done.
It's at the very bottom of that
Yep.
giant chart, and I had been like,
Well,
well, if I ever get money, I'll tackle this.
So that's that one. Now the gift is, this is because we're trying to be very transparent, because we always like to say, oh, we added all this land. The county occasionally does go the other way with properties. Particularly that gift is the Reed's Farmhouse. That was because we were able to purchase, I think, the 4 acres up there around the Reed's Farmhouse and the hill. But we had the historic farmhouse there, and we were not able to solve what we were going to do with it. So we entered a partnership with Habitat for Humanity and a company called L'Arche, who are making that a recovery home. And so part of the exchange was that they were taking it over. They were going to improve that building and put that facility in there, which has greater community benefit. But we gave them the land. Well, the gift was probably sold to them for $1. That surrounds just that house. So that was a reduction of 0.32 acres for the system. So we recorded.
And I have to say, this is one of the things we insisted upon in the public space master plan too, to make sure that we were also accounting for any loss, because we were seeing that in some occasions. So that was, I really appreciate the fact that staff has been very diligent in sure that we're.
Absolutely. And there's another one up there. There's a right-of-way abandonment. And most likely what happened in that case was DES was doing some work around an intersection. They needed a little space, so some land transferred to DES to be able to do that.
Other questions? So we are going to be, the timing is a little weird, so I really appreciate Eric coming to our this meeting, because initially we talked about June, but they want the comments into the board because it's a work session on June 2nd. So I will propose that we do a letter. We've already written 2 letters on the natural capital and resiliency, so I think we can draw off of that, but anyway, we'll be voting on that. So you all are aware of the timing of all of that we need to get our comments in right away. So I appreciate that. And doing it one more time. And just so you all know too, he's got this encyclopedic knowledge of all of this. There were no notes, no additional notes other than a slide. But he also knows the stuff. So it's a wonderful asset. You're taking the time. Any other questions? We let Eric go home and get something to drink?
I gotta eat.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Really appreciate being here.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, they can pass them through, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay, while we're on it, if we are in agreement, I would propose that we go ahead and send a letter strongly supporting the Natural Resiliency Fund. And I would essentially be repeating a lot of the from what we've had in previous letters about the need for long-term funding for invasive management, and the fact that it's not just invasive management, it really is making that investment. So if you guys if everybody's okay with those basic points, I need to turn it around pretty quickly. But
The fact that natural capital is now considered something worthy of bonds
yeah,
is a big deal.
yeah. I will include that in the letter, and I'll send a letter out for comment, but if you all generally agree, we will adopt that as, okay, so can I have a motion? Okay, so second, okay, any other discussion?
So no mention of the boathouse one way or another.
I would not.
Okay.
It's a much more of a parking lot kind of a thing, but
Nice green space there.
actually.
Call it water under the bridge.
Oh, Quincy Park was also on that list, and Quincy Park was a cool $30 million on that,
Exactly.
on that list.
Way
too.
down the list. Though.
Yeah, and not that far away. It's what they have it on 2030. It's only 4 years away.
I do want to say though, I mean, it's significant that he said that, the idea is to have a design that is more than just for rowers, for crew folks. So if they can make it into something that is kind of for everybody in Arlington, as well as having places for the crew teams to operate.
And actually,
Well,
the
that's what
location
we
they
want.
ended up is highly invasive, is a mess. And
Yes.
so when we were going through this back in 2019, and this is forever. But when we were going through that part of the location, when working with National Park Service and all of that, was finding a location that we could actually improve as opposed to taking something that was in good shape and making it worse. So this was identified as, and also where it is in Roslyn, that people could actually walk there. You could take the metro and go.
I noticed there's several years between the time the boathouse is done and the upper lot is done.
Yes, yeah.
So what are they gonna do in those couple of years?
Fundraise?
For Georgetown?
Well, no, are gonna have access. This was all part of the long-term plan. of it,
Okay,
that they
I
would-
don't wanna get into
That they would have short-term access and then they'll be over boat. And there was gonna be a nature center there too, so.
We turn to the boathouse separately then. So the letter you proposed
Okay,
is.
go ahead. This is, so any other discussion then? All those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? So who do we have online? We had Connor? You're good? Okay, thank you. And I think we had John for a little bit, but I think he's not. Okay, so unanimously. Okay, good. I will get that out and circulate it to everybody if there are additional comments. Okay, great. Thank you. So comprehensive plan. Thank you, Bob, for sending that around.
Been
Yep.
mindful of the time. Pass that way, pass that this way. And we have Vincent. Andrew's made copies of the larger, few copies, not copies for everybody, of the larger guiding principles and supporting statements documents, so you all can share that. So let me just ask this, because everybody's kind of familiar with what this is. I don't need to do the 101, do I?
No,
That we're updating the comp plan. So David taking on the climate change plan and all the other stuff on his plate. I took over as the point person for this and attended a long-range planning committee meeting on May 13th. I made a number of comments, but my first comment was to say that I didn't have FNRC consensus, so I was along the lines of giving them a heads up of some of the issues that we've talked about when David has talked about it here. Some of those issues, David, were issues that you've raised in your comments, and a couple other issues that I've heard from either other commissioners or that I see or that I've heard from citizens. The objective here is to do an introductory chapter to the larger comprehensive plan, which would include guiding principles and then supporting statements, basically a more detailed vision document for the entire comprehensive plan. That's a phase one. Phase two would then be after that gets out to consider whether there should be any changes in the general land use plan or other zoning or other policies and programs of the county. So phase two is put off as we're not working on that now. We're not talking about zoning changes at this time. We're working on this intro chapter. This got started in 2024. David, I think that's when you started attending meetings for it. And over the last 2 years, the planning division has had a lot of public meetings. They've really done a good job of going out and trying to hit groups that often aren't heard from. And have had a great many meetings and are mindful of input from different groups from around the county. I will say that they haven't made a concerted effort yet that I'm aware of to talk to individual civic associations or the Civic Federation. So that is an issue that's been raised, that in addition to talking to smaller groups, they need to talk to other groups as well before they start bringing this to closure. On this 2-pager that I sent around, I have a quote from the Planning Commission website on what they intend for phase two. At the meeting on May 13th, I made some comments. Other commissioners from the Planning Commission and other commissions made comments verbally as well. And individual citizens spoke. Josh, you made public comments and other folks commented as well. ATAG, there was an ATAG rep, I believe, there who made comments. So in thinking about this, the larger document that you're sharing lays out the 7 guiding principles, which are based on APA, that's American Planning Association, I believe, guidance on how to set out planning principles. The county is obligated to think about their comprehensive plan on a regular cycle. The last time they did it was in 2019, I believe. And so it's timely that they're looking at it again under the banner of continuous improvement. What they're doing is the 7 principles are identified as livable and thriving Arlington, inclusive Arlington, sustainable and environmentally just Arlington, healthy and safe Arlington, economically and socially resilient Arlington, regionally collaborative Arlington, and infrastructure ready Arlington. Under those 7 guiding principles, the staff has identified at current count 43 supporting statements, which are divided across the principles 5, 6, or 7 for each one. And then what they've done is they've used logos, as you see on this handout, to identify which of the 12 current comprehensive plan elements, one of which is our forestry and natural resources plan, apply to each supporting statement. Some of the comments I've heard have been that these are great guiding principles and they're setting out a good vision for the future, and they're really thinking about the current way that Arlington is changing and has changed over the last decade or two. Other comments I've heard have been along the lines of the principles are very broadly drawn, so broadly drawn that they're basically all things to all people, and that it's going to be difficult to kind of boil down what you want to do in the club based on these, or alternatively, you can justify almost anything you want to do in the club based on how broadly these are drawn. The same goes for the 43 supporting statements. One of the comments that we have made, that David has made on our behalf, has been to think about things like we ought to be focusing on how to integrate the 12 comprehensive plan elements, because right now they're kind of stovepiped. We ought to be thinking about how to integrate nature into basically all of these things. Not just, and you'll see our logo is the little lizard. That's the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan logo. Wherever you see the lizard, that's where they've made that connection. One of the comments I made at the LRPC meeting is essentially I could say almost all 43 supporting statements should have a lizard, because nature is so much a part of what you're trying to do in Arlington, from housing to transportation to schools. And we're involved with a lot of that stuff as a commission. So it's great that they've started to do that, but we need to do even more of that. Another comment that David has made, which I personally agree with, is there's 3 recently articulated county goals addressing climate change, improving natural and urban biophilia, and focusing on greater environmental equity. And these should be front and center in any introductory paragraph, that introductory chapter that you do, because a lot of what the county is looking forward to 2050, should be addressing those very important points. And, we know this from having heard a long presentation tonight about the climate action plan.
Well, these are 3 resolutions that the county.
Yeah, they're official. That's right. That's right.
Formal commitments to.
So in addition to those points, I do want to point out that there's a couple comments that I made that reflect views that I've heard from a number of citizen groups. I already mentioned the one about the plan guidance and principles and supporting statements are too broadly drawn. I've heard that a point that the existing transit-oriented development model for Arlington, which has been our operating model for over 2 decades, the model of building higher density along transportation corridors, mainly Metro Rail, but now we're seeing Metro bus corridors as well with Columbia Pike and Langston Boulevard, that it hasn't been explained why that's broken, and that should be explained in an introductory chapter if you want to change that. One other point that I wanted to raise was, I guess I've raised all the points that I've heard and points that I've raised at that meeting. So at the bottom of the 2-pager, is a proposal for a letter that I would like to, an idea I'd like to put on the table. For this commission to send a letter to the planning commission, not the county board yet, but the planning commission. This would be similar to verbal comments that were made at the meeting to the planning commission. So if we had had a consensus, I would have made these comments verbally. But basically write this down and send it to the planning commission as our current comments on the current set of 7 guiding principles and 43 supporting statements. And I basically just run through what the 7 comments are. I'm not going to run through them again. You can see them there.
And I would note too, that there have been a number of other commissions that have sent comments in too, so it would be.
As well as commissioners at the meeting raising them verbally.
Yeah.
The technology commission guy had a pretty long, extensive set of verbal comments that he made that were very specific. And I think ours are getting specific too. I just want to be very honest with you guys that perhaps the most controversial thing among the 7, because some of these are kind of basic. Why does FNRC even exist? Why do we have a forestry plan as part of the comprehensive plan? So I hope that they would be pretty easy to agree with. I think the one that I just want to draw attention to is the statement that we should retain the transit-oriented development model for Arlington. And I look at that in terms of maintaining green spaces and tree canopy. I personally believe that we are not going to meet our 40% canopy goal ever, unless we make some more significant commitments in all the other plans to have biophilia, natural biophilia, green space, and tree planting be a part of that. And I see it as part of the lot coverage effort, part of the transportation plan effort. John's been talking about that, closing off streets and making them green spaces. You can go right down all of the major cross-cutting plans that are in the works now, not the least of which is the climate plan, and say that we need more serious commitment to actions, not just verbal commitments, but actions. This was my rant earlier in the meeting. That we really need to see this translated into, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, not just put the little lizard logo down, but do X, Y, and Z to address deficits in our tree canopy. So should I make a motion? Because I'm putting a proposal on the table to prepare a letter.
We can talk about it if we have a motion, then we can talk about it.
Sure.
So I would move that that we draft a letter. I'm happy to draft a letter for you that would address these 7 points more or less. And send that to the planning commission for their consideration as part of this long range planning project to get our marker down on the table with specific recommendations on how we think they should proceed.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So now discussion.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is great work, and I do have a couple of basic. I don't know if they're additions, but it's a way of coming into this. The first year in this process, they were using the APA guiding principles as a placeholder, as a starting point to get comments. One of the guiding principles, as you all remember, was harmony with nature. It was completely focused on nature. That's gone in this new configuration. What's also not really very strongly evident in any of the 7 guiding principles we have is nature or trees or biophilia in the actual guiding principle statements themselves. It all falls in at the next level down. That's not acceptable to me. I don't think it's worthy of having an entire having a county board resolution and an entire comp plan element not be represented in the statements themselves. So I think that needs to be strengthened. That partly in some ways responds to your to your concern about the prioritization. The second thing, though, and this has to do with the yet unforeseen structure of the document, is these are draft guiding principles with supporting statements. It's one way to do it. You know, you got to choose a way to lay it all out there. But the chapter isn't just this. It's going to be narrative. It's going to be text. It's going to have a current state of affairs, current state of play, current conditions of the county. It's going to have a variety of other things. There will be context around it. And so as much as we want to make sure that this doesn't underappreciate some of the things that we think are important in the actual statements. There are also other places where some of the things we've talked about, like how the different plans can work together, how we can have mutual common goals between different stormwater plans, how we can also achieve some of the things that may not on the face of it seem to be compatible or achievable, and also have things like biophilic design. But there are ways to do it if, sort of like what I was saying when Rich and Jen were here, that these different plans are talk to each other at a high level. So I'm not quite sure how much we want to put in of these points, how much we want to put in this letter. But because the full draft of the chapter is supposed to come out in midsummer, I think that this kind of input now is the only time, or is the best time, to try to get that, you know, some shifting in the way that we would want to see, because we don't know actually what they're writing. And I, you know, past experience, these sort of cross-cutting, how do you fit things together, has not been a very reliable thing to expect. So I guess for me, that kind of emphasis is a little bit ahead of the worrying about what's going to happen with density. Although I'm not saying that's not something to pay attention to. But when it comes to that, the one word, to me, one word is really kind of pulls it all together, and that's geography. You know, missing middle and ignored geography. It focused on units on a lot. It didn't really, and otherwise it was a free-for-all. And it put the driver's keys in the hands of people who least care, the builders. So, you know, to me, it's about having some guidance in this plan that says, if we're going to achieve all these goals, we have to achieve them by having all of them be represented in the choices we make about how we use our space and what we do where, because that's how you get transportation efficiencies. That's how you get energy, climate policy achievements, and a lot of other things that we want. And yeah, if you do it right, you can have a lot better housing situation too. But you have to make the tough choices about how to make those things fit together. So far, we haven't had those kind of tough choices made in a very productive way.
So would that be your recommendation then on number 3, then to think about instead of focusing just on transit?
I think, yeah, it's mostly
Or just add that?
just add up. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about, well, I don't really feel positive about asking in an introduction to explain why something is inadequate, because we're worried about what might happen if they don't. Because first of all, I don't think they would do that. And second time we don't really know what it, I would rather tell them how to make, the positive, how to make it work. Rather than put on the table what we're worried about, what might happen if it doesn't work. But that's just me, it's the way
Let me,
Uh-huh.
So, and as I told Bob, I took a look at another comp plan that I thought was a very good comp plan, which is the Portland, Oregon comp plan. We tend to have a lot in common in terms of interest in environmental matters. And we've got for the guiding principle, we've got environmental justice, which I think kind of completes things. Portland chopped it up into a separate guiding principle for equity and one for environmental health. And I would like to see something along those lines because environmental health gets into what we're all about, trees and so forth. Whereas, as David said, this is sort of relegated to a second tier. And I think by focusing on the environment, whatever phrasing you want, it's more meaningful. And there, for that matter, a number of the guiding principles are pretty vague, like livability, thriving Arlington, and so forth. But the guiding principles are meant to be broad. So I wouldn't quibble about that.
Does that give you enough guidance?
Yeah, well, I will have Josh speak because
Okay, go ahead.
Josh may talk about this a little bit too.
No, thanks for all the hard work
Just
on
a
this.
time check, it's 9:15.
Yeah, I'll try to be kind of brief here. So, no, all good points. Some of the ones particularly I feel strongly about that should be included is number 3 in terms of the development. And the reason for that is I went to the October presentation they had on this. Was it George Mason University? It was a big thing the county put on. Maybe some of you were there or talked to everybody. And halfway through the staff presentation, the construct was, yes, we need to review this every 5 years under the law. And then we haven't updated this thing since 1961. Therefore, we need to have this huge effort to do all this verbiage, have the introductory chapter. And I'm thinking, well, we've been doing pretty good for the last 50, 60 years without necessarily making huge changes to this introductory chapter. So people should explain more what is wrong with the current arrangement before we introduce a whole bunch of verbiage that none of us really know what it means, where it's going, or which direction. I mean, it's all nice verbiage, it's all feel good, so forth. So I felt from like a strictly analytical perspective, there needs to be a better discussion of what can't we do under the current circumstances that we need to make these substantive changes for an unknown purpose ultimately. That's if I'm
The Forestry Natural Resource Plan was not adopted when they did these previous guidelines, so.
nobody's denying things haven't changed, but the flip side is also true. We do need change in language to the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan. So we were able to do the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan to land with the current language we have. And the current language we have also has a bit more of operational focus. And that was one of my points to staff that this is a lot of nice feel good language. Who's going to oppose it? But at a county government level, I'm looking for operational impact. Not necessarily these grand design things that we come up in the State Department and we're making international treaties in the future of the world. It's nice to have such thoughts, don't get me wrong, but for a plan for a county government, something more operationally focused. And then on number 6, this kind of came up at the Long Range Planning Commission. I'll mention, people kept talking about priorities in our various plans. This is going to help us choose priorities and we come to a certain point of the state. This will help us choose what our priorities proper. And I thought that was entirely the wrong framework. The point of this chapeau paragraph is to choose language you've been using around the table, holistic, how to balance things, not take one over the other when we come to this point. Yes, tough decision made, but the point is to make these things in some balanced fashion. So I feel number 6 is quite important also. And I more or less agree with the other ones here too, depending on how the draft comes out.
Go ahead.
I think I agree that the point at number 3 is useful to raise. I think providing some sort of roadmap, where we've been and where we're going is entirely appropriate. It's a constant frustration of mine and Arlington's plans that they don't do a very good job of identifying where we've been in these. We kind of assumed that it's just sprouted out of this need, and sometimes that's unintentional and sometimes it's intentional. And I think since the TOD has been such an important part of Arlington's development over the last decades, I think that's an entirely appropriate point for us to make, that they should tell us, is this something that we're still committed to or not? And if not, then please explain where this is taking us.
David?
I just want to clarify my earlier comment about that. I was focusing on the point about asking them to explain why it's inadequate. We're presuming they think it's inadequate. I think we should that should be part of the explanation of how we got to where we are, which the county has been bragging about for 40 years and which we still think works. And as I said, geography matters. We've laid out the basics, and the basics can be embellished. They can be expanded in reasonable ways, but the values that were under those basics are still what most Arlingtonians want. So it's not that I'm saying that the model shouldn't be part of it. I'm saying, instead of asking them to say why it's inadequate, they've not said it's inadequate. And so that's, to me, it's the wrong way.
We just ask then, is that an affirmation for the sentence that, to me personally, my view is our most important sentence in the piece, which is the second sentence in number 4. So we don't ask them, hey, please explain why it's inadequate. We say, we still think it's adequate, and that should be stated up front in the introductory chapter as continuing to be the model we should follow.
That would work for me too.
I think that works.
I
I think it's always smarter to pick something you're willing to fight for than fear about something that you don't even know yet.
We haven't said that. Yeah, so just change that to it's
Yeah,
a positive,
yeah.
not a negative.
But to answer David's point, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said there, but if you sat through that October presentation, you're left with, well, whatever we have must be inadequate, because otherwise we'll be spending hundreds of hours of staff time presenting all this information, drawing us all together. Implicitly, it was messaging, whether intended or not, the current situation is not adequate.
So-
I agree.
Could I
It's
also-
like imagination, not as I said, with Missing Middle, for example, they're testing the waters on something. You know, we wrote letters you and I even co-wrote one letter. All that through that process, telling them they were approaching it the wrong way. And it came out that they were stuck with the methodology they started with, and as a result of that, they came out with a wholly unsatisfactory solution, which the board had no choice but to either take it or not take it, because that's all there was. But it was really not a very satisfactory approach to the challenge, and we've tried to address that. That you can do a lot in this area without just throwing the baby out with bathwater.
To get us to a vote, because I think we're pretty close. I've gotten good feedback from a bunch of you guys, and I think I understand the points you've made, so you'll see if I can capture that in the draft letter. I think for the inadequate thing, one way to approach that would be to invite the county to assess the adequacy, assess the successes of TOD.
Well, that shouldn't be hard, because as people have said,
So the
every time you talk to a county, the second thing out of their mouth
Yeah.
is how wonderful this
Yeah,
is
so I
and
would
how great.
definitely.
Puts it on a positive note.
Yeah, and a very-
It helps support what
Yeah.
we'd like them to continue
We
doing.
should build on our successes. That's all you have.
So if you want,
It uses the word build and it uses
I
success.
also like the fact that
Jen?
I was just gonna say, so like normally in policy, we make recommendations. We often think of fixing something, but it's also continuing something that's actually doing well, right? So it's often like what works, what doesn't. So we fix what doesn't, but we want to expand or improve on what does work. So that might be the framing, or that might be, I don't know the background of it. But just to say it could be one or the other. And so I don't know that we should assume, if we don't know, that it's broken, and maybe that it is the other path of this is working and how do we expand it or do more of it or what have you. So just another way of thinking about it.
I wanted to emphasize what he brought up earlier, that nature should be first and foremost in everything, and have a salamander in every one of these principles.
Okay, thank you for doing that. And also we're taking a vote on what
Slimy
we said. And, but you'll drop it, circulate it, see if anybody doesn't. Or send it to me, then they can send comments to me that way. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not that there's anyone on.
They've all gone to bed.
Yeah, everyone went to bed because it's not there.
I was just thinking, 2 weeks right before our meeting, so we get it back early.
That's great.
And we can get.
Okay, that sounds great. We can work on that.
Yep.
Okay, I have one last thing to do. John Kerry sent around the transportation letter. I thought it was great. I didn't see any comments from anyone, so I'm gonna make a motion that will someone make a motion? Can we adopt that?
I make a motion that we accept John Kerry's letter as is.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second, but
Okay,
I
comment.
sent him some comments just back to him,
Oh, you
which
did,
he said
okay.
he was going to do. So with your language, that would work
Oh.
as is, because it's
How
not
about the
as
John
is.
Kerry
That would-
letter? Amend your motion?
I do. I amend the motion. I guess I move that we accept John Kerry's letter, subject to amendment.
That sounds great. Good with that?
Yeah.
Now you
I
said-
didn't want to get technical.
Okay, good. No, I appreciate that. Any other discussion?
Can I just make one comment on this letter? In that the pictures show a lot of developed areas and a lot of, not that they're bad, it's like, here's this park, but it's all and wood, and there's no natural space. So I just found them interesting examples. So if we want to sort of have more nature, more green space and more whatever, I'm not sure that sort of cement sidewalks and that is a good picture to use. Because I think great that we all, there's a lot of focus here on canopy, but there's also, I want to say, like, how do we get rid of a lot of the impermeable spaces, right? There's just a lot of concrete, a lot of other things and when I see the park designs and things like that, it's just a lot of cement and a lot of things that aren't particularly permeable. I just think that's maybe another place where we can kind of nudge and say there are different resources to use
So
for
we
those
could
to make them
subject
more
these-
natural.
Possible different photos then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit more natural,
Okay,
or at least different materials.
okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Like, it's unanimous again. Great, okay, thank you. I'm sorry to keep everybody so late. I knew we had a.
Improve the minutes.
Yeah,
minutes.
Just-
Thank you.
I had a bureaucratic moment, I'm sorry.
Is best, all those in favor of adopting minutes? I think there were some technical, one or two little technical. Any opposed?
I'm saying.
Did we? Thank you. So I think we just adopt them by unanimous.
Staff reports were great.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, just before you hands at me just real quick, we had talked about teeing up for the county board some suggested ordinance changes based on the legislative language in Patrick Oak's tree bill. We kind of waited for stuff to play out to make sure the government knows you guys messed with it. All of that was played out. It exists. I'd like to ask if we could have that be an agenda item at the team meeting.
Yeah, and
I can draft something for that too.
okay, that'd be great. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, thank you. And thank you very much, Andrew, for being our staff.
Right.
Yeah.
To follow up with you if there's any holes in the.
Sure.
We can go smoothly. Tell Vincent, though, he's not off the hook completely.
I think we should ask him to describe what a yellow pimple is.
Yes, there we go.
A yellow pimple.
All right, thank you all. And apologies for keeping everybody.
Let's go.
Did he answer?
I wanted to ask what he's under, but like,
Yeah, well, we got it done.
it's not good when they're just not paying attention.
You know.
Need a moment.
Yeah,
Like, we're like
I
building.
didn't really have any.
Refreshing viewing.
I do like my little thing.
Yeah.
Going right to the sound, I'm like, I can.
Like, I have no.
So-
idea.
Yeah, why don't we try to meet on?
Planning stuff.